Hey everyone, Pastor Tim here. I'm glad you could be with us today. This is our third part in our new series on the unseen realities, the spiritual realm. Today we're going to continue to add to our topic, continuing to create an image, to build a picture to help us better understand the realities that we are faced with. Today we're going to talk about three topics, and we're going to put them all together as we do. And the first of these topics, we're going to talk about the angels that the Bible speaks about that are reserved in the darkest places until the day of judgment. And we find reference to these in Jude and Peter. Jude says this, in Jude 1:6 it says, "And the angels who did not keep their own position, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains in deepest darkness for the judgment of the great day." And then in 2 Peter 2:4 it says this, "For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of deepest darkness to be kept until the judgment." So we're going to look at these angels. We're also going to look at what the Bible refers to as watchers. We saw this in Daniel chapter 4. And then we're also going to look at the subject of giants. And then we're going to tie all three of these topics together with Genesis 6 verses 1 through 4. And it's going to give us a better picture of what the Bible is trying to communicate to us. Now first, hey, if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. I believe that our channel will bless you. And if after this video is over, if it has blessed you, be sure to like it and share it so that it can bless others. Now, I want to start off looking at Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. See what it says. It says this, "When people began to multiply on the face of the ground, daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, 'My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown.'" Now, as we examine this passage of scripture, these topics, we need to understand that this is an actual event that Genesis 6 is talking about, something that really took place. Just like if we were to look at the Civil War or the sinking of the Titanic, these are events that happened. That means they're historical events. And so we're going to also examine other historical documents that are going to help us to build on our image of what's happening in Genesis 6. Now, it's important as we examine these historical documents, we understand they're not divinely inspired. They're not like the Bible, okay? But they are historical documents that help us to understand this event a little better. Now, the documents we're going to look at are the writings of Josephus. Josephus was a Jewish historian. He's going to help to create what a Second Temple Jewish person would have understood, how they would have seen this event. And the Second Temple Jewish people would be the writers of the New Testament. They lived during the time of Jesus. Josephus lived in the 1st century. We're also going to use the Book of Enoch. So what is the Book of Enoch? Well, the Book of Enoch is a historical book, if you would. It's been written through a course of time. It's made up of different sections that can be dated to different time periods. Jude directly references the Book of Enoch, the first section of it, and that's what we're going to look at is the first section. Both Jude and Peter indirectly reference the Book of Enoch when they talk about the angels reserved in darkness. And so it's going to help to really create a better understanding of what went on in that time period. We're also going to look at some ancient Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets and what they have recorded throughout history. And all of this together is going to help create an image that allows us to better understand what went on in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and how it affects our life today. Now, I want to start off looking at Josephus and see what he has to say about this. And we're going to look at what he writes, and he's talking about as the line of Seth went on, people started developing, growing, civilization was moving forward. Enoch is from the line of Seth. And so we're going to kind of pick up where he's talking, and he's going to lead into this event. Now, Josephus says this: "Now the posterity of Seth continued to esteem God as the Lord of the universe, and to have an entire regard to virtue for 7 generations. But in process of time, they were perverted and forsook the practices of their forefathers, and did neither pay those honors to God which were appointed them, nor had they any concern to do justice towards men. But for what degree of zeal they had formerly shown for virtue, they now showed by their actions a double degree of wickedness, whereby they made God to be their enemy. For many angels of God accompanied with women, and begat sons that proved unjust, and despisers of all that was good, on account of the confidence they had in their own strength. For the tradition is that these men did what resembled the acts of those whom the Grecians called giants. But Noah was very uneasy at what they did, and being displeased at their conduct, persuaded them to change their disposition and their acts for the better. But seeing that they did not yield to him, but were slaves to their wicked pleasure, he was afraid they would kill him, together with his wife and children, and those they had married. So he departed out of the land." We see that these unjust giants led the children of men into new levels of wickedness and depravity. Man fell into sin with Adam's sin. But when these sons of God, these angels, came in and had children with the daughters of men and bore these giants, a new level of depravity was released up on the earth. Now, we're going to look at the book of Enoch and what it says about these sons of God, which we're going to see are referred to as watchers. So the book of Enoch paints an incredible picture of the sin of these sons of God that Genesis 6, 1 through 4 speaks of, and what they did and how it magnified sin upon the earth. And again, why would I use the book of Enoch? One, because Jude uses it, directly references it, and then also Jude and Peter indirectly reference it when they speak about the angels reserved in darkness. And they reference the first section of it, and that's what we're referencing too. And so the book of Enoch paints this picture of these angelic creatures called watchers who descend upon earth, 200 of them. They see the daughters of men, they're beautiful, they want them. And so they decide to go in and have an affair with them. They make a pact with each other, bringing a curse upon themselves. And they make this pact, they go in and they have sexual affairs with them. They have children. These children are giants, the book of Enoch tells us, just like the Bible tells us. And so, but the book of Enoch elaborates, and it tells us how these watchers taught men magic, sorcery, astrology, taught them how to create weapons from metal, taught them the ways of war. And so we begin to see this picture of how the watchers, how their sin of going in and having sexual affairs with the daughters of men, how not only did they bring that curse upon themselves, but they taught men how to do wickedness, sorcery, magic, all these things. And this depravity, this sin, it moved God, forced God to take action. And the book of Enoch tells us how 4 archangels, Michael being one of them, came down and basically took control of this situation, took these angels, these watchers, and bound them until the day of judgment. It also speaks of how their children, these giants, continued in this depravity, leading men astray. And so the book of Enoch paints this dramatic picture of how these watchers, these sons of God who left their first state, influenced mankind, just adding to our depravity, our ability to do evil, and how it really has continued until this very day. So the book of Enoch goes on and it further elaborates on giants, letting us know that giants, once they died, their spirits became evil spirits that plagued mankind. Now for you and I, that may seem like crazy and hard to understand and believe, but for a Second Temple Jew, that's what they would have believed. Second Temple Jews would have been the writers of the New Testament. Now, to further help us understand what went on in Genesis chapter 6 about these watchers, we can look at Mesopotamian history, which is recorded on cuneiform tablets. Now, on these tablets, they speak of events that happened before the flood and after the flood. And it speaks of these angelic creatures, which they interpreted as gods. And if you remember last week, we looked at Psalms 82, where it talks about God, Elohim, sits in the midst of judgment of the Elohims. And so we saw how Elohim isn't necessarily a proper name of God, but can be used to refer to spiritual beings of different kinds. And it was often used to refer to the Most High God, just in reverence of not using his name. And so on these tablets, we get this picture recorded events before and after the flood. And before the flood, how these watchers, these angelic creatures that they interpreted as gods, and how they came and helped their kings to rule, to further society in different ways, and how afterwards their descendants, who they referred to as part God, and they were considered part divine and part man. Well, these would have been these giants that the Bible speaks of, and how they continued to help guide their sages, as they served as sages, guiding the kings of Mesopotamia. And so all of this creates this fascinating picture. As we put together what the Bible says in Genesis, what Jude says in Peter, the book of Enoch, Josephus, and even these Mesopotamian tablets, we put this all together. What do we get? We get an image of these watchers, these angelic beings descending to earth, taking on flesh, 200 of them, looking at the daughters of mankind, thinking they're beautiful, going into them, having sexual affairs with them, producing offspring that are giants, half angel, half human. Sounds crazy, yet history and this Bible records it, and how they led man into a new level of depravity, teaching them sorcery, witchcraft, and how it brought God's judgment upon the world. You know, we look around, we see a lot of these things in our world today, all of them, and we see how mankind is still corrupted. We want to be aware of what's going on around us, and the source of depravity, corruption, where it comes from, so that we can better confront it. I pray this video has blessed you. Next week, we're going to continue to add to it. We're building layers, creating this image to help us understand the reality we are confronted with, so that we can successfully navigate this life, living it to the fullness, what God has put us here to do. If this video has blessed you, be sure to like it and share it so it can bless others. I hope to see you next week as we continue to build on this topic. We're going to be talking pretty soon about spiritual warfare, but we're trying to build an image so we can better understand what we're up against.